Hi everybody and welcome to Hann-Made Studio. I'm Cheryl Hann-Woodlock. Today we're going to talk about cutters, cutting glass. Do you know how to do it? Do you do it sometimes really well, sometimes not so really well? Today I'm going to show you some tricks of the trade to make this easy, so stay tuned. A lot of people out there have huge issues trying to cut with glass. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't get it right. Is it the tool or is it the technique? So tools versus technique, let's have a look. I've got a pistol grip, I've got a pencil glass cutter. I'm going to show you how they both work and some tricks of the trade to make your job a little bit easier, so stay tuned. The tools that I have here are very varied. As I said, I've got the pistol grip. This is a little bit more expensive, but it can be easier on the hands. The first one I'm going to use is the pencil glass cutter. It has a little rotary here, and I'll show you a close-up in a minute of the parts of this tool so you know how it's used and why you use it that particular way. The other thing that will make it easier for you is I do have a cutting mat. So this is a cutting mat. It's plastic. It's just a little bit softer on the glass. Some people like using felt. I don't use felt because I find that it grabs all the fibers, and when I'm working with clay, it becomes a bit of an issue. So this works really well for me. The other thing that I do have is a honeycomb. So this is a honeycomb glass cutter. I'll show you how that works as well. I've also got some blue tack. You're going to ask why. I will show you this to you. So if you're just going to use simple tools, there's the blue tack. The other thing you will need you don't have to have a set square, but I've got two different size set squares. I've got a really big one, and I love this because it has inches as well as centimeters, which is awesome. And this one is a smaller one. It doesn't have any inches or centimeters. I suppose I could write it in, but I haven't bothered. But a square set square is going to make your life a lot easier. If you don't have a set square, let's just settle for a ruler. I've got this ruler. It's a little bit wide, so I've got that edge there, so that works really well. And this is a ruler that has a nice square edge as well, so it's got that thick edge. A thin edge is not so ideal because I will show you in a minute why. So we've got, I've got some clear glass, I've got some mirrored glass because that's going to be easier for you guys to see out there. I've got all my tools ready. I've also got some metho because I'm going to clean the glass first. I've got some WD-40. Why am I using WD-40? It's a light oil, it works for me. Some people use Kero, that works just as well, or a light sewing machine oil will also work. So there are different oils that you can use. As I said, I just have the WD-40 here because I find it really handy to have, and it's always in my studio, and it's a big can, I can always find it. The other tool that you will need to make your cutting a lot easier, these are called running pliers. So these are running pliers. They have plastic on the end, and I'll explain the running pliers to you later. But this helps to break the glass. So it makes breaking the glass a lot easier. And I'll give you a close-up of those as well. We're about ready to start, so let's go. I've got my cutter ready to go. I filled it up with oil. You don't have to fill it up with oil. You may want to have a little bit of oil sitting at the side and just dip that in. So that is another way of doing it. You need to have this oil so the wheel runs smoothly. There is a little wheel there, and that is what's going to score the glass. We have a short end and a long end. The long end is going to face towards you. When you're cutting with the glass, you need to have your pencil straight at right angles. You cannot cut glass with it at an angle of 45 degrees like you were going to write. Also, I've seen people when they want to cut, they have their wrist down. You need to have your wrist up. Notice I've got my little finger out while I'm doing this. So I find that having my little finger out helps me also. The other thing with cutting with this rotates around, the head rotates around. The reason it rotates around, it allows you to go around in circles, but we want to do a straight line, so it becomes a little bit tricky. Now you can go down or you can go up. It depends upon the way you want to cut. Going up is really handy when you're trying to do circles and you want to see the pattern that you're creating. As I said, it is a preference. So I'm just going to go up for the first time. I've got my straight, I've got my wrist up, I've got my little finger out to give that support. Now I'm just going to have it slightly at an angle. Now, if I have it this way, what's going to happen, sometimes it goes off. So what I like to do is just have that finger there just to rest that. We'll see how it goes without that finger there. Now I've got to press it against the ruler and slide it along firmly. Okay, when you cut, you want to hear that even score. All right, so let's have a look at this. You can see that score line. Can you see that? Yes, you can see that score line. So that was a nice even score. Now the running pliers that I've got here, they've got a little line in the front, and that, I'll just do another line there so you can see that better. That line goes in line with this one, and I'm just putting it there. And now I'm going to just squeeze these very gently. I'm not going to go too fast because what I'm trying to do is create a, there we go, and that snapped beautifully. So let's try this again. This time we're going to go down. I've got my piece of blue tack on my ruler, and I'm going to go down this time. So remember, wrist up, finger to steady it, and I'm going to just press against that ruler, making sure it doesn't go off. You can see that there are nice even lines through there, and I've got these little chips of glass flying off, so you should always wear your protective glasses to make sure those chips. I've got my running pliers, just going to squeeze that, and you can see that line, it hasn't gone through all the way through. I'm going to turn that around and cut that, and away we go. So that's cut really nicely. What I do like using is these set squares. They are wider than the ruler. They also have this line through here, which means it sits at the right angle on your glass, and it makes it a lot easier to press up against your ruler to get your straight line. So let's go again. The pencil grip is at that right angle to each side. It's not at a 45. So right angle, make sure this is sitting nicely, and let's move it up. All right, now this moved a little bit. I could have put some blue tack on there and that would have stopped that moving. So let's do another one. And the reason it moved just slightly, is that I don't have a long sheet of glass over here. So that's why it moved. We'll try again. So again, remember, right angles. You can have it tilting slightly towards yourself. Move it along, and you've got that lovely cut, nice and firm, and you can see that line is still there. Now, when I tap this, I'm going to use the back of the pen, and you can see what we call a running line happening. So what's happening is that the score line is creating this movement, and you can see it's coming through on the glass. So if I put it at that angle, you can see that the score line is tapping through. And if I continue to tap, that cuts that, and then I can just cut it that way. That means you don't have to invest in a pair of running pliers like this. Let's do that again. We'll tap. Get that running line working. You can see that running line. It is, there we go. You can see that line. It's thicker. And as we tap it, so I'm using the bottom of this. I'm tapping underneath my line. And then I can just, well, I can actually use a pair of pliers and just cut that. And I've got that glue there. So that is how you can break your glass. This mirror cut, I like practicing on mirror or clear glass. This mirror came in to me, it cost me nothing to use. So that's why I like practicing on this. It allows students to have a little bit of a play without investing a lot of money. Don't practice on a good sheet of expensive glass. Use plain window glass or 3mm mirror glass. That will work really, really well. Now, we can also use this so that we can cut, and I'm going to cut down this time, cut down. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 1-inch guideline here. So this has a lot of grids on it. Now, the other thing too is I'm lining up the blade, the rotary blade that is on this cutter with the line that is in here. So my ruler is not in line with the line I want to use. The ruler is slightly set off because of the width of the cutter, the head of that cutter. So I'm just going to slide it down and that gives me a cut. Again, slide it down, that gives me a cut. Firmly slide it down. Now, sometimes you will hear that actually didn't cut. You can go back over it, but the problem with going back over it, the chances of you getting exactly the same is not good. And you can get 2 cut lines, which will interfere with your work. So that is cut. And again, I can use my running pliers to break this. And it's easy to break a short line than it is to break a long line. So just remember that shortcuts are a lot easier. Or I can tap this and break it off. And I've got my fingers in between that score line, tapping at the back, and that breaks off. I'm not worried so much about cutting my hands. Once you get used to cutting glass, you actually don't run your thumb along it that way. If you run along that way, you won't cut yourself. If you run along that way, you will. The other thing you can do to get rid of your sharp edge is what I do with the head of my cutter. I actually run it on the top there and I run it underneath. By doing that, I actually get rid of those sharp edges, and that is something very handy for beginners to know. You can get rid of your sharp edges by just running your pliers over it, and that way you haven't got such sharp edges. So that is cutting the glass on this mat. Before I put this mat away, I actually have glass shards on here. You can't actually see that, but they're very, very small glass shards. If I sweep them up, the chances are they're going to be airborne and they're going to get into everything. So what I do is I get my vacuum cleaner out and I actually vacuum the glass shards up. Because I work in clay, I want to keep my table really clean and I don't want glass shards flying around. I also have my dogs in here, so I want to make sure that they don't get any of these very, very fine shards into their paws. So I'm going to vacuum. Now that's clean and I can put this away. These are honeycomb mats. They are ideal for cutting glass. They trap the glass in here and they make it easier to cut. They also have all these grid lines, which means if you want to get right angles, it is a lot easier to work out the right angles. The other thing that this honeycomb has is a little reservoir with a sponge with oil in it. So it means that I can actually dip my glass cutter in there to oil the wheel on this cutter. So that's a really handy little tool. So what I'm going to do is join these together and away we go. So I've got a long grid mat now. I could use it singularly just for that glass, but it doesn't quite fit that glass, so I'm going to put two together. Now, if I place this on here again, it's going to slip around. The honeycomb system actually has little buttons. These are rubber buttons, and these little stoppers you just pop in onto your grid, and that's going to hold your glass in place. So that gives it the grip that you want, which is fantastic. So that's now secured. I'm going to use my tool so I can cut my straight line. I'm going to start from the top. Now remember, the shorter bit goes away from you, so that's the shorter area. The longer area goes towards me. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hold this straight, not at angles, not at that angle. It's got to be straight. It's also pressing against that. Press it down. You also hear that come down and score along. And that is a nice score line. Remember, I can use my running pliers, like that, and give it a gentle squeeze. You can see that snapping through, and that has snapped. The thing you must remember, mirror is very easy to cut, so is plain glass. When you're using patterned glass that has different textures through it, it's a lot harder to just get that nice cut going through. The next thing I want to do is I want to just do a line. So I want to follow that line through. I'm using a permanent marker. Any permanent marker will do. Remember, your permanent marker comes off when you clean your glass. So when you use methylated spirits, it will wipe away. You won't see it. Now, I've got this right over to the side. I'm going to put that more directly in front of me so my body is behind this glass cutter. Often people are too far away. They haven't got their body under themselves, and so they're going to get into difficulties of getting the right pressure. I'm going to move up and around. Now, to do this, you can actually have another hand guiding you to make that a little bit easier as you're going through. So you can practice your move and see how that goes. If you use the one hand, it can be a little bit difficult. So it does take a little bit of practice to get any movement happening. So let's have a go. Press down. Remember, this has to be at the right angle, not at a 45-degree angle. So move it around. You can see I'm using my other hand as a guide, and I'm taking. You can't see it because of the black mark, but when I start tapping it, you can see the run line going through. I'm going to tap at the other side. I can do it with my hands. No, yeah, it's not coming loose yet, but if I give this a little bit of a tug, is it coming through? You need to give it a little bit more of a tug. Often with curves like this, the run doesn't work so well, so you need to make sure that that cutting line is going through. So a bit more of a tap. And we've got that line cut. Now remember what I said about those sharp edges? We can just run our glass cutter over that just to get rid of that sharp edge. And you can see here that foil, I've got a really sharp edge there. Now I can just grind that away by using the back of my nipper. You can also use your Gosling pliers to do that. If you do that, you do get a lot of shards running around. So remember always to vacuum. So again, I'll do another mark, and let's just do that a nice simple curve like that. This time I'm going to move it towards myself. Now I'm hoping that my finger doesn't get in the way so I can see what I'm doing. My body is directly over it, so I'm pushing down, not so far away that I'm having to use my whole body here. So place down, I can see what I'm doing. I'm at a right angle using my other hand. And you can hear that glass cutter cutting. You can hear it scoring the glass, which is really, really important. There we go. Now, if I want to use the running pliers, I can. Let's try the running pliers. I'm just going to gently squeeze on the top, then I'm going to go the other side. So I'm just gently squeezed, and that run has run through there. I'm just going to squeeze the other side, and it comes apart, and that is a nice cut. Again, use your pliers just to get rid of that sharp edge. And I'm going to do the same here because I've got this extra glass there. Run that through, and I've got that nicely cut. So that is the pencil grip. This Toya pistol grip is fantastic. The reason I like Toyo is that you can actually change these blades. So this will screw out, and you can replace this blade. You'll get lots and lots of cuts. You'll probably get around about 100 hours worth of cuts on this particular little roller, but after a time it won't be rolling properly, and you will get these score lines where it will be doing this. It will start missing areas where the roller is blunt, and what we're looking for is a continuous line when it scores without any gaps. So when it starts making gaps, this is when you need to replace this top part. So these top parts can be replaced. See how it's got a little bit of movement? That's so you can go around circles. Now the pistol grip is really good because it fits nicely in your hand, and you can put your thumb here over it, and you can actually put more pressure onto it. The other thing I like, if you want to, you can actually put your other hand over, which makes it easier to cut for people who don't have strong hands and also who have issues with this thumb joint. So I'm just going to show you what I mean. So we'll do it one-handed. So if I put this down, I'm just going to put a little bit of oil onto that. Press this down, and away we go. Now, it stuck a little bit because this hasn't been used before, so I've just oiled that up again. I'm going to give it another go. Hold that. And it's a lot easier to press down. It gives you a little bit more pressure going down rather than trying to hold the pencil. So I want to do a curve with this, and the pistol grip allows me to use both hands to do the curve. So make sure it's not moving. All right, so hand on it. Now I'm going to be using my whole body, so I'm going to lean over. You can't see my body leaning over, but you need to make sure that you are a comfortable height for yourself. So I've got my hands over it. Also, I want to be able to see exactly where I'm cutting, and I'm following the line through nice and easy, and that is a nice cut. Again, if I want, I can tip the back of this. I can use the back of my toya and get that run. You can see that run is starting to happen on the glass, and that broke off. So give those pieces of glass a little bit of a wipe just to get rid of those sharp edges. And we're done. So you can see that the pistol grip, when you're using it, can be a lot more comfortable and give you a lot more pressure to do your cuts. As you can see, you don't need a lot of tools to cut glass. Is it tool or technique? Usually it's technique. So we have two tools using the same technique. So if the technique is not working for this particular tool, maybe you might need to go to the pistol grip. That will give you a little bit more control and a little bit opportunity to have more pressure when you are pressing down on your glass. So let's just go over this. Right angles, not 45-degree angles. Make sure that you are pressing down so you can hear that score line happening. And then you are cutting your glass. Practice on your scrap mirror or scrap window glass. 3 mil, 4 mil at the most. If you start getting up to 5 mil, it's going to be too hard to cut. You also don't need running pliers. These are the running pliers. They are really handy to have, but you can get away with just tapping under your glass, or you can use a pair of glass pliers and just gently ease that down. But as you can see, it's pretty easy. Tool or technique, have a go. We'll see you later. If you liked what you saw today, could you please hit that like button? Remember to subscribe and ring that bell. I'm Cheryl Hann-Woodlock from Hann-Made Studio saying bye for now. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. As you can see, both work really well. It does depend upon the person which one you prefer. A lot of my students who don't have very strong hands much prefer the pistol grip because it gives them that opportunity to put a lot more pressure onto the